Top US arms makers are forecasting a significant rise in sales in the coming year. After a pretty solid 2012, Washington has been shifting its sights towards Asia, looking to arm its allies neighboring North Korea and China. Well, independent journalist James Corbett joins us now from Japan. Thanks for joining us. America arming its allies then on top of its own military shift towards Asia-Pacific. How worried is the US about China's growing military prowess?
Well, that's an interesting question because I think what we can see here with this strategy of the shift towards the Asia-Pacific and then suddenly this report saying that now the U.S. arms contractors are going to be gaining billions of dollars of contracts from this shift, what we can see is really just a return to a very old imperial strategy of building up boogeymen in order to then create the sales to combat those boogeymen. So it's a very old strategy. It was identified by name by President Eisenhower in his farewell address in 1960 when he talked about the military-industrial complex. And here we are half a century later with the exact same strategy at play. And before it was the communists, then there was al-Qaeda and the terrorist threat, and now there's China and that threat. So I don't know if it's a question of a real existential threat that China is posing here so much as a chance for contractors associated with the U.S. government to make billions of dollars.
You mentioned sales there. I mean, what is the key gain, in your opinion? Geopolitical muscle, or as you say, billions of dollars in sales from arms sales, revenue, that is?
I think one of those feeds into the other, and I think it creates a situation where the economics may be what's driving this pivot towards the Asia-Pacific, but that in turn creates geopolitical realities. So that, for example, China now sees all of these arms sales going to Korea and Taiwan and Japan and some of the U.S.'s allies in the region, and they respond with military armaments of their own. So it's a kind of self-perpetuating prophecy that fulfills itself by the economics of the situation. So I think it becomes a geopolitical reality, and it's no coincidence that just after they announced this Asia-Pacific pivot in the last couple of years, suddenly we see all of this commotion about the South China Sea and the East China Sea and these territorial disputes.
Looking on the wider sense, I mean, how much is North Korea's missile launch last month being used as a military marketing tool, as it were?
Well, I think that's the right frame for it. Again, it's not really the question that there's the imminent sense of an existential threat for North Korea so much as another excuse to use a North Korean launch as the panic to create the market for more of these devices. So now, for example, just last month we saw a new $1.2 billion sale of Global Hawk spy drones to South Korea, as on the back of this commotion about North Korea. And obviously we see the opening of a brand new market for drones, which are nominally aimed at either North Korea or China, and again just helps to fuel the billions of dollars of contracts that are being opened right now.
So with all this going on, I mean, how do you expect North Korea to react when it sees countries like Japan and its neighbors getting American military upgrades?
Well, interestingly enough, we've just seen Kim Jong-un come out and talk about the possibility of creating some kind of détente or peace with South Korea. So we really don't know. That's a big wild card, a joker in the deck that we can't really say much about. But certainly I think China specifically understands the type of threat that's being built up right now and the deep integration that the U.S. is trying to achieve with ASEAN and their allies in the region. So I think China is probably going to be more of the concern in the years ahead.
And still with China, I mean, what about their response? I mean, since U.S. arms manufacturers will help upgrade the air fleet of Taiwan, for example, a territory China still claims as its own, I mean, what will it do to Washington relations?
Well, obviously, it's not going to help relations at all. And of course, Taiwan is one of the most sensitive parts of the entire region and has long been envisioned as the place that might be the tinderbox that sets off the bigger explosion in the region. So I think China definitely, Beijing has its eye on what's happening with Taiwan and the effort to retrofit the F-16 fleet of Taiwan, but also the Japanese X-band radar, for example, that just recently is being expanded and worked on. I think has to be seen as a threat by China as well. So I think definitely we're going to see an increase in tensions, and that will probably create more situations like we saw in the past year with the Senkaku Island dispute between Japan and China.
Okay, independent journalist James Corbett, thank you for your time today.
You're welcome.